I never really got how someone could bail on a wedding last minute. I mean, weddings aren't something you just jump into on a whim. You don't roll out of bed one morning and randomly decide, hey, let's get married. No, it's a process. You plan it, you think it through, you commit. Or at least, that's what I believed. Turns out I was dead wrong. Sometimes the wedding doesn't happen. And sometimes it's not even up to you. That's exactly where I ended up. Just 2 weeks out from saying I do, I discovered the woman I was supposed to marry had been hiding something from me. Not just a little white lie, I'm talking full-on betrayal. She was cheating. The kind of betrayal that knocks the wind out of you and leaves you questioning every moment you shared. And me? I didn't scream. I didn't lose it. I didn't storm out or shut the whole thing down right then and there. Nope. I put together a plan, one that she'd never forget. And when the time was just right, I vanished. For good. My name's Ryan Cole. Up until 2 weeks before what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, I thought I had everything figured out. I'm 34, born and bred in Phoenix, Arizona. I worked as a lead operations coordinator for Bennett and Sharp Development Group, one of the biggest commercial construction companies in the state. We weren't in the business of building homes or strip malls. We built the city's bones. Skyscrapers, arenas, massive developments worth millions. If you've ever been to Phoenix, chances are you've seen something I had a hand in. I wasn't just doing well, I was killing it. 6-figure salary, a company-issued Ford F-150 Raptor, an office downtown with floor-to-ceiling glass, and a reputation for getting big projects done on time and under budget. My job was intense, cutthroat even, but I thrived on that pressure. My life was on track. Then I met Vanessa Hartley. She wasn't just the kind of woman you noticed, she had this energy that walked into the room before she did. We met at the Rusted Cactus in Mesa during my buddy Dylan's engagement party. She walked in like she owned the place, blonde curls on point, piercing green eyes, heels clicking like she had a mission. I nudged Dylan and asked, "Who is that?" He told me she sold high-end real estate. Highland Park. Multi-million-dollar listings. Vanessa was the kind of woman who made you want to raise your standards just to keep up. She was sharp, witty, magnetic, the type who could convince a guy shopping for a one-bedroom to go all in on a penthouse. She had talent and she knew exactly how to use it. When we started talking, it was like the rest of the room faded away. She laughed at my dumb jokes, asked questions like she genuinely cared about my answers, made me feel like I actually mattered. By the end of the night, I was hooked. We dated for a year before I popped the question. I did it right, Vincent's Prime Grill, private booth, a Cartier Solitaire I had to special order from New York. I'd never dropped that kind of cash on something so small, but for her, it felt right. She cried the second she saw it, said yes before I could even finish the words. She kissed me like I was the only man on earth. That night, everything felt locked in. My future was set. For the next 12 months, it was all wedding planning. I didn't care much for the little things, so I let her take the reins. She picked the venue, the Phoenix Arboretum. Elegant, pricey, exactly her style. The guest list? Full of agents, developers, people from her circle. I wrote the checks, stayed out of the way. Everything was going exactly how we'd planned. Then 2 weeks before the wedding, I found the receipt. It was just a regular night. I'd gotten home from work, still wearing my company polo, kicked off my boots, and headed for the fridge to grab a beer. I reached in for a Shinerbach, and that's when I spotted it. A crumpled piece of paper half-tucked under some takeout napkins. At first, I almost ignored it. Vanessa wasn't sloppy. She didn't just leave stuff lying around. But something about it caught my eye. So, I picked it up. Sage and Barrel. Uptown Phoenix. The date? Last Monday. Paid in cash. 2 entrees. 2 glasses of Cabernet. 1 dessert. Thing is, Vanessa had told me she was in Chandler with her mom that night. My gut twisted immediately. I tried to tell myself it wasn't what it looked like. Maybe she met a client. Maybe it was a friend. Maybe. I really wanted to believe that. But deep down I knew. The same instinct that helped me sniff out shady deals and cover-ups at work, that same voice was now telling me, Ryan, she's lying. I had to know the truth. I needed confirmation. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm went off. The receipt was still on my nightstand, right there next to my wallet and my watch. I must have taken it out before bed, though I didn't even remember doing it. That's how deep it had burrowed into my mind. I picked it up again, smoothed it out in my hand. Sage and Barrel. 2 meals. 2 wines. 1 dessert. I stared at it forever, running through every possible explanation in my head. Maybe it wasn't hers. Maybe her mom had dinner there and Vanessa grabbed the wrong receipt. Maybe she really was in Chandler and this was all just a weird mix-up. But I couldn't lie to myself. That wasn't her style. Vanessa didn't pay in cash. She charged everything to her Amex Platinum, groceries, coffee, even parking meters. So why cash this time? Something wasn't adding up, and what I was about to find would make everything crystal clear. There was just no way Vanessa's mom was sitting in a dimly lit steakhouse in uptown Phoenix, sipping Cabernet with some mysterious dinner companion. That wasn't her scene. No, this had Vanessa written all over it. Which meant she had lied to me. That morning I got ready like it was any other day. Threw on my usual dark jeans, boots, and a Bennett and Sharp Development Group polo. Skipped breakfast, made some coffee, and headed out the door like nothing was wrong. I walked into the office, dropped my truck keys onto my desk, and tried to zone in on work. But my mind wouldn't shut up. By noon, I couldn't fake it anymore. I walked over to my assistant's desk. Zoe Kim, 26, sharp as hell. She basically ran my life with zero effort. I need to take off early, I said, trying to sound casual. She glanced up, one eyebrow raised. You? Leaving early? That's new. Personal stuff, I muttered. She gave me a knowing shrug. All right. Just don't forget about the meeting with the architects tomorrow. I nodded, grabbed my keys, and walked straight out. I parked my black F-150 Raptor 2 blocks down from Vanessa's office on Monroe Street. Far enough not to be seen. It was 4:35 p.m. She usually got off work around 5:30, so I just sat there, engine off, eyes on the front doors of Hartley and Clarkson Realty. McKinney was buzzing. Rush hour in full swing. People flowed in and out of cafes and bars, some heading home, others just starting their night. A couple of guys in suits stood outside a whiskey bar, puffing cigars, laughing loud enough to cut through traffic noise. And I just waited. At 5:26 p.m., Vanessa stepped out. She looked like she was headed to a gala. Fitted white dress, soft waves in her hair, those signature red-bottom Louboutins clicking on the pavement. Not your typical clocking out for the day kind of outfit. She walked with purpose. This wasn't a quick stop on the way home. She wasn't heading to Chandler either, where she claimed her mom lived. She got in her white Range Rover and pulled out. I waited 30 seconds, then eased onto the street behind her. She headed south, driving past Victory Park and into downtown traffic. The sun was starting to dip, painting the skyline gold. It was one of those sunsets that made the city look like it was on fire. But she wasn't driving home. No, she kept going straight into Fremont District. Neon lights were flickering on as we turned onto Elm Street. The place was alive. Crowds filled the sidewalks, music spilled out from bar doors, and couples strolled hand in hand. But Vanessa wasn't there for the nightlife. She made a sharp left onto a quieter street and pulled into the valet at the Prescott Meridian. A sleek, upscale boutique spot, not somewhere you meet clients. I slowed down, parked a bit up the block, and watched. She stepped out of the car slowly, like she wasn't in any rush. Checked her phone. Smiled. She wasn't nervous. She was waiting. At exactly 5:48 p.m. he showed up. Black Mercedes AMG. Immaculate. Tinted windows just shy of illegal. The kind of car that says, I've got money and I want you to know it. He stepped out tall, dark hair, dressed in a navy suit that probably cost more than my mortgage. Looked like one of those finance guys who never had to check the price tag and only drank whiskey older than I was. And then Vanessa walked up to him. And he kissed her. Not some quick, awkward peck. This was full on. Comfortable. Like they'd done it 100 times before. Like I didn't exist. I felt my heart crawl up into my throat. My whole body went still, every muscle locked down. But I didn't move. I didn't throw the truck into park. I didn't jump out, didn't scream her name, didn't do anything stupid. I just sat there, watching my entire reality collapse. For a year, I'd been building a future with this woman. Signing checks for florists, caterers, a wedding planner. Sitting through endless talks about color palettes and seating charts. Pretending to care about honeymoon destinations. Smiling like a damn fool every time she called me my fiancé. And this is what she was doing behind my back. I exhaled, hands locked around the steering wheel like a vice. I told myself not to blow up. Not here. Not now. I needed to stay calm. Think smart. I stayed in that truck for a long time, just watching. Vanessa and her mystery man disappeared into the hotel. My fiancé. The woman I was supposed to marry in just 2 weeks. And you know what? I wasn't even angry. Not yet. I was cold. Focused. And I knew exactly what I needed to do. I needed proof. I needed Callahan. His office was this hole in the wall in Arlington tucked between a pawn shop and a Taco Bueno. No signage, no receptionist, just a scratched-up metal door with a faded sticker that read Sentinel Intel Group and a buzzer that barely worked. I knocked twice and walked right in. The smell hit me before anything else: stale coffee, musty files, and the lingering stench of cigarette smoke. The AC was cranked up, but it didn't stand a chance against the thick Arizona heat rolling in through the half-open blinds. And sitting behind the cluttered desk was Callahan. Just Callahan. No first name, no handshake, no small talk. He looked like the kind of guy who used to be a cop, late 50s, skin like worn leather from too many years in the sun. He had on a beat-up leather jacket even though it was 95 degrees outside, and a half-burned Marlboro Red hanging loosely from his fingers. "You're early," he said, tapping ash into a foam cup half full of bitter coffee. "I didn't make an appointment," I told him. He leaned back in his chair, sizing me up. The whole office looked like it hadn't been cleaned since the 90s: piles of old files, a rattling desk fan barely hanging on, and a landline phone straight out of a crime drama. Against the wall, a dented filing cabinet sat next to an ashtray overflowing with cigarette butts. I'd met guys like him before. The ones who've seen too much and don't bother asking questions unless they absolutely have to. "You sure you want to know?" he asked, his voice rough, like he'd spent a lifetime chewing gravel. I nodded. Callahan crushed his cigarette in the overflowing ashtray, then opened a drawer and pulled out a yellow legal pad. "All right. What's her name?" "Vanessa Hartley." He looked up. "Fiancé." "For now," I said. He grunted and flipped a page. "You got a reason to suspect her?" I leaned in, resting my elbows on his desk. "She told me she was at her mom's place last Monday. But I found a receipt from Sage and Beryl: 2 entrees, 2 glasses of wine. Paid in cash." Callahan scribbled something down. "Anything else?" he asked. I looked down at his fingers, yellowed from years of nicotine. "I followed her yesterday. She drove to the Prescott Meridian in Fremont District. Met some guy. Black Mercedes AMG. Tall, dark hair." I paused, swallowing hard. "They kissed," I said. The words felt heavy just saying them out loud. He didn't flinch. No reaction. Just nodded slowly and closed the pad. "Got a picture of him?" I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and slid it across the desk. The photo wasn't great, taken through my windshield, but it was clear enough. Callahan studied it for a few moments, then passed the phone back. "Give me a week." Exactly 7 days later, I walked back into that smoke-stained office. He didn't say a word. Just opened his desk drawer, pulled out a manila folder, and slid it across to me like it was nothing. I sat there staring at it, heart thudding in my chest, before finally picking it up. Inside were photos, clear, time-stamped, damning. Vanessa and the Mercedes guy. At hotels. At restaurants. In parking lots. Every encounter documented like clockwork. "She's got a rhythm," Callahan said, lighting another smoke. "Leaves work, meets him. Sometimes it's dinner. Sometimes they check into a room. But it's always him. Same guy. Every time." My jaw clenched so tight, I thought I might break a tooth. Then Callahan opened a second folder. "Figured you'd want to know who he is." I looked down. Name: Nolan Grayson. Job: private equity strategist. Office: Grayson Fairchild Holdings, right in Uptown Phoenix. Address: high-rise condo on Turtle Creek Boulevard. Of course it was a finance guy. One of those rich pricks who spends his weekends on the golf course and thinks loyalty's just a slogan on his country club's welcome brochure. I felt my fingers dig into the edge of the folder like I could tear through it. "She's been seeing this guy for about 3 months, Callahan said, puffing away. "That's not casual. That's routine. Habit. 3 months. That meant while we were touring wedding venues, she was sneaking off to hotel rooms. While I was writing checks for the damn florist, she was sipping Cabernet with him. While I was planning forever, she was throwing it in the trash. She's not even trying to hide it," he added. "Women like that? They don't stop." I closed the folder slowly, the weight of it pressing down on my chest like a cinder block. I stood up. "How much do I owe you?" Callahan waved a hand. "This one's on the house, kid." I squinted. "Why?" He gave a crooked grin and flicked ash into the coffee cup again. "Because I like seeing a man wake up." I nodded once, then walked out the door. Back in my truck, I just sat there. For over an hour, staring at that manila folder sitting in the passenger seat. Every shred of proof was right there. Vanessa Hartley, my fiancée, had been seeing another man for 3 months. A private equity strategist with a black Mercedes and a skyline view. While I was picking fonts for wedding invites, she was laughing over steak with this guy. While I was locking in honeymoon dates, she was checking into boutique hotels. While I was building us a life, she was setting it on fire. There was no way I was going through with the wedding. That part was obvious. But just walking away in silence? No way in hell. She humiliated me, and I was going to make sure she remembered it for the rest of her life. I drove home to our place in University Park. Everything was just how I left it. Vanessa wasn't there. She was at a bridal fitting in Highland Park Village, probably sipping champagne with her bridesmaids, smiling, laughing, talking about our wedding, like she hadn't shattered it all behind my back, and she had no idea what was coming next. I walked into the apartment and dropped myself onto the stool at the kitchen counter, just staring at the cold marble top. You'd think I'd be full of rage, heartbreak, some kind of emotional explosion. But the truth? I didn't feel any of that. All I felt was clarity. I needed a plan, not a screaming match, not some dramatic, messy scene. I wanted precision, something clean, something she'd never be able to forget, something that would stay with her like a scar. I went into the living room, grabbed a pen and a pad from the desk drawer, and started to write. Vanessa, I know everything. Enjoy the wedding. I won't be there. That was it. No long speech. No pointing fingers. No demands for an explanation. Just the truth, simple, sharp, and final. I folded the note, slipped it into a plain white envelope, and sealed it. I ran my fingers along the edge, picturing the moment she'd open it. Standing at the altar, in front of 180 guests, her friends, her family, all of them watching. I imagined the silence that would fall over the crowd, the weight in the air, the look on her face. It was perfect. I wasn't just walking away, I was dropping a bomb. The next morning, I headed to Frisco to see my brother. Ben Cole, 3 years older, married, father of 2. One of his kids, little Mason, was supposed to be our ring bearer. He'd been so proud, kept practicing his walk, beaming as he talked about carrying that little white pillow down the aisle. It broke something in me just thinking about it. I pulled up to Ben's house and cut the engine. He was out in the driveway working on his Silverado, wiping grease off his hands when I stepped out of my truck. Hey, he called, tossing a rag on the workbench. Didn't know you were stopping by. I walked up slowly, hands in my pockets. I need a favor. Ben raised an eyebrow. What kind of favor? I pulled the envelope out of my jacket and held it up. I need Mason to deliver this, at the wedding. He wiped his hands on his jeans, eyeing the envelope like it might explode. What is it? Something for Vanessa, I said. She'll understand when she sees it. He frowned, clearly sensing something was way off. Ryan, what's going on? I looked down at the concrete, my voice quiet. I could have told him everything. I could have handed him the folder, showed him the photos, laid it all out. But I didn't, because this wasn't about getting sympathy. This wasn't about revenge. This was about ending it my way. Just trust me, I said. Can you do it or not? Ben stared at me for a while, like he was trying to read between the lines. Then finally he gave a slow nod. Yeah, I can do that. I crouched down and called over Mason, who was kicking a soccer ball across the lawn. Hey, buddy, I said as he ran up to me. I've got a special job for you. His eyes lit up. Like a mission? Exactly like a mission. I handed him the envelope. At the wedding, instead of carrying the rings, I need you to take this up to the priest. Mason nodded seriously, clutching the envelope with both hands. I can do that. I ruffled his hair. That's my guy. He ran off, back to his soccer ball like nothing had happened. I stood up and met Ben's eyes. You sure about this? He asked. I nodded. Yeah, I'm sure. Then I turned, got in my truck, and drove away without looking back. That night I started packing. Not just a change of clothes. Everything. I dragged out my old duffel and filled it with shirts, jeans, boots, whatever I needed. Grabbed my laptop, my passport, every important document I owned. I wasn't leaving behind a single thing. By the time Vanessa walked back into that apartment, everything I owned was packed. And by the time she'd be standing at the altar, looking for me, I'd be long gone. The Phoenix Arboretum had never looked better. Rows of crisp white chairs faced a massive arch of flowers, perfectly framing White Rock Lake. The sun was out, guests were sweating politely in their suits and dresses, fanning themselves under the brutal Arizona heat. A live string quartet played softly in the background while servers weaved through the crowd with champagne on silver trays. Everything looked flawless. Everything had gone exactly as planned. Well, almost everything. One detail was missing. The groom. Vanessa stood at the altar, glowing in a custom Vera Wang gown. Her blonde curls were set in soft waves, makeup picture perfect. She had spent a whole year fine-tuning this moment, every flower, every bite on the menu, every person in the seating chart. It was all about precision. But as the minutes ticked by, something was clearly off. The guests started shifting, whispering. Her father, Charles Hartley, glanced at his watch. Her mother, Diane, tightened her grip on her champagne glass and whispered something sharp to one of the bridesmaids. The priest cleared his throat awkwardly and leaned over to Vanessa. Do we know how much longer the groom will be? Vanessa forced a smile, but her knuckles went white around the bouquet. He'll be here, she said through clenched teeth. He's just running late. She was wrong. Because I was never coming. At exactly 4:23 p.m. the music shifted. Heads turned toward the aisle, expecting to see me making my grand entrance. Instead, it was Mason, my 6-year-old nephew. He walked slowly, carefully, just like he practiced. But instead of the ring pillow, he carried something else. A silver tray. And resting on it, a single white envelope. A wave of whispers rolled through the crowd like a sudden wind. Heads turned. Confused glances bounced around the garden. Vanessa frowned, staring down at little Mason as he approached the altar, holding out that silver tray with the envelope perched on top. The priest looked unsure, scanning the audience before slowly reaching for it. His fingers hesitated as he unfolded the note. A thick silence fell over the ceremony like a blanket. Then he cleared his throat and read aloud, voice steady but tight. Vanessa. I know everything. Enjoy the wedding. I won't be there. The words hit the air like a thunderclap. Gasps echoed across the chairs. A collective intake of breath. Murmurs turned frantic. Eyes darted toward Vanessa. She went pale, like every drop of blood had drained from her face. Her fingers tightened around the bouquet, knuckles white. She didn't speak. She couldn't. For the first time in her life, Vanessa Hartley had completely lost control. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Then her knees buckled. She collapsed right there in front of 200 stunned guests. The bridesmaids scrambled to catch her. Her mother screamed. The priest stepped back, holding the note like it was something radioactive. The whole place unraveled. People stood up, looking around in confusion. Diane Hartley turned sharply toward my brother. Where's he? Where's Ryan? She demanded, voice shaking. Then just shook his head. Gone. And he was right. Because while Vanessa was falling to pieces under a floral archway, I was already buckled into a window seat on a flight out of Sky Harbor Airport bound for Salt Lake City. The plane smelled like recycled air and too much cologne. I leaned against the cold window, my only luggage a duffel bag, my phone, and a one-way ticket. Before we even took off, I turned off my phone. No texts. No calls. No explanations. I was out. And she was never going to see me again. We landed in Salt Lake City just before sunset. As I stepped onto the jet bridge, something inside me eased, just a little. It wasn't peace, not yet, but the pressure on my chest started to lift. The air smelled different here, cooler, crisper, like pine and distant rain. Nothing like the heavy, choking heat back in Phoenix. I rented a silver Chevy Malibu and hit the highway heading south toward Park City. It was about a 2-hour drive down I-25, but I didn't care. The Rockies loomed in the distance, those snow-covered peaks stretching across the horizon like they were daring me to start over. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't running from anything. I was heading towards something. By the time I pulled into Park City, the sky had turned a deep purple, the city lighting up below the hills. I found a cheap motel off Redwood Parkway, grabbed a greasy burger from a joint called Drifters and sat in the quiet of that room, staring at the ceiling. No phone calls. No texts. No one knew where I was. And that was exactly how I wanted it. The next morning, I took the first step toward rebuilding. I walked into the office of Clearline Integrated Solutions, a solid mid-sized construction firm known for big commercial projects across Colorado. No fancy lobby. No corporate suits. Just real work. The owner, Frank Maddox, was an old-school guy, gray beard, thick calluses on his hands, always in the same worn Carhartt jacket. He gave me a once-over when I walked into his office and leaned back in his chair. You ever build in the mountains? He asked. No, sir, I replied. Most of my experience is in Arizona, high-rises, stadiums, corporate parks. He nodded, chewing on the end of a toothpick. Whole different game up here, he said. Snow loads. Wind loads. Soil shifts. Not like building on flat dirt. I gave a small grin. I learn quick. Frank looked at me for a long second, then reached under the desk and pulled out a clipboard. Got a project in Ogden. Mixed-use development. Need a guy who can keep contractors in line and keep schedules from slipping. Pays $75 a year. He didn't wait for my answer. Take it or leave it. I took it. Just like that, I had a new job. A new start. Over the next year, I kept things simple. I bought a modest house on the west side of town, tucked up near the foothills. 2 bedrooms, 1-car garage, small deck with a view of the mountains. Nothing flashy. Traded in my Raptor for a Toyota Tacoma. Something low-key, dependable. I deleted my social media. Stayed quiet. Worked hard. When people asked why I left Arizona, I just said I wanted a change of scenery. Nobody pushed for more. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't looking over my shoulder. Then came Brooke Carter. I met her about 6 months into the Ogden job. She was an environmental systems designer, easily one of the best I'd worked with. Smart as hell. Confident. Knew her craft inside and out. The first time I saw her, she was on-site, hard hat and steel-toed boots, arguing with a plumber about load-bearing walls. You can't just cut out more space for the pipes, she snapped, arms crossed. You weaken the structure, the whole floor loses integrity. The guy rolled his eyes. I've been doing this for 19 years, lady. She didn't even blink. And I've got a master's degree in environmental systems designing. Unless you've personally reinvented gravity, we're doing it my way. I caught myself grinning. She had fire. After the plumber stormed off, I walked over, hands in my pockets. Make a new friend? I asked. She sighed. Men get real sensitive when you tell them they're wrong. Yeah, I said. We do. She smirked. Glad you can admit it, Cole. I raised an eyebrow. You know my name? She shrugged. I read site reports. Unlike some people. That got my attention. Brooke wasn't anything like Vanessa, and I mean that in the best way. Vanessa was all about polish and presentation. Brooke? She was about practicality and results. Vanessa cared about appearances. Brooke cared about integrity. She didn't flirt to get ahead, didn't care who had what car or how big your paycheck was. She was just herself. Real. Grounded. And it turned out that was exactly what I'd been missing. We started with coffee after meetings. Then it became lunch. Then one afternoon, out of the blue, she asked if I wanted to go hiking. I don't hike, I told her. She just grinned. You live in Colorado now. You hike. So I picked up a pair of Merrell boots, stuffed a water bottle into a backpack, and followed her up through pine brush trails. By the time we reached the top, I was panting, soaked with sweat, and ready to collapse. Brooke, on the other hand, barely looked winded. See, she said with a smile. That wasn't so bad. I let out a laugh. I hate you. No, she said, still smiling. You don't. And she was right. We started dating not long after that. No candlelit dinners. No 5-star restaurants. Just time. Simple, easy, real time. We'd grab tacos from a truck, sit on her couch binge-watching terrible reality TV, laughing at the drama like 2 teenagers. It was the most effortless relationship I'd ever been in. No mind games. No pressure. No second-guessing. And a year later, I gave her a ring. No grand proposals. No orchestras or flash mobs. Just me and her, standing together in a quiet field outside Spring Hollow. No crowd. No speeches. Just vows that actually meant something. For the first time in years. I was genuinely happy. I'd built a whole new life, new city, new job, new everything. I did it right. No Facebook. No Instagram. No mutual contacts left open. I cut every cord tied to Phoenix. I disappeared. But if there's one thing I should have known about Vanessa Hartley, it's this: she doesn't let go. Not quietly. Not ever. At first, I thought I was in the clear. 3 months passed after the wedding chaos, and I braced for impact. Maybe angry texts. Maybe a cease and desist. Maybe even someone pounding on my front door. But nothing came. And for a while, I actually thought maybe she's too embarrassed. Maybe she picked up her life and moved on the way I did. I was wrong. About 6 months into my new chapter, I got a call from Ben. I was sitting at my desk, watching the clouds roll over Silver Ridge Summit when the phone buzzed. You're not gonna believe this, he said, voice tight, somewhere between amused and irritated. I leaned back in my chair. Try me. She's telling everyone you left her at the altar because you were cheating on her. I almost laughed. That's rich? Oh, it gets better, he said. She hired Vellner. That name made my stomach drop. Marcus Vellner wasn't just any lawyer. He was the guy in Phoenix. High-profile corporate lawyer. The kind of man you hired when you weren't looking for justice, you were looking to bury someone. And Vanessa? She'd written him a check. That meant one thing. She wanted blood. I started digging. Turns out Vellner wasn't just aggressive, he was surgical. He didn't go to court to argue. He went to destroy. And that's exactly what Vanessa was paying him to do. She started small. Filed a defamation suit claiming the note had humiliated her, ruined her reputation, caused emotional trauma. That her friendships had been shattered. That her career had suffered. It was a joke. Arizona is a one-party consent state. I could have released every photo, every receipt, every time-stamped piece of proof, and legally there was nothing she could have done. But this wasn't about winning. It was about pulling me back into her world. Then came the whispers. She told people I was abusive. Said I manipulated her. Isolated her. That she'd been too scared to break off the engagement on her own. That she was a victim. A story carefully crafted to flip the script. She'd gone from cheater to survivor. And the worst part? Some people believed her. Some didn't. But none of it really mattered because I wasn't there to defend myself. The thing that really ate at her? I disappeared and she couldn't touch me. That lawsuit? Never even got off the ground. She didn't have a case. And more importantly, she couldn't find me. No address. No Instagram. No digital trail to follow. I'd buried myself so deep in Park City that not even her high-dollar Phoenix lawyer could sniff me out. At one point, she even tried pressuring my brother. "You think I cracked?" Ben said, laughing when he called me about it. I let her waste an hour trying to pry info out of me, then sent her chasing her own tail. She had money. She had lawyers. And she had all the rage in the world. But none of it helped. She couldn't reach me, and that drove her insane. Until one day, she did. It was a Monday in March, almost 3 years after I vanished from Phoenix. I was at Ground and Grind Cafe in downtown Park City, my usual morning stop. The place always smelled like espresso and cinnamon, just the way I liked it. I was standing in line, scrolling through work emails on my phone, waiting for my black coffee and breakfast burrito when I heard a voice I hadn't heard in a long time. Sharp. Familiar. I see. Well, look who finally stopped running. I turned around slowly, and there she was. Vanessa Hartley. Standing just a few feet away, designer heels clicking on tile, holding a Chanel handbag like it was armor, wrapped in a fitted wool coat that clearly wasn't made for mountain weather. For a moment, I just looked at her. Not because I was surprised she found me, but because I couldn't believe she still cared enough to try. Her face hadn't changed, but something underneath had. She still wore that smug confidence like perfume, but there was something else now. A kind of desperation. Like she'd been chasing a ghost for 2 years and finally cornered it only to realize she didn't know what to do next. I raised my coffee and took a slow sip. "Vanessa." Her lips tightened. "That's all you have to say?" I glanced at the barista who was now blatantly eavesdropping from behind the espresso machine. "Not exactly the place for this kind of chat, is it?" She gave a dry, bitter laugh. "Oh, I think we've got plenty to talk about, Ryan." I sighed, set my cup down, and nodded toward the door. "Fine," I said. "Let's talk." I wasn't running this time. I wasn't avoiding anything. I just wanted this finished. She followed me home, but not because I invited her. Vanessa Hartley never needed permission. She walked right through the door like she owned the place, her heels clicking on the hardwood as she brought a wave of expensive perfume and Arizona humidity into my quiet mountain life. I closed the door behind her. Calm. Steady. She had expected something else. Maybe she thought she'd find a man still licking his wounds. Someone broken, alone, stuck in the past. Instead, she found a man who'd rebuilt his life from the ground up. Her eyes scanned the room, the open space, the stone fireplace, the photos on the mantel. One of them stopped her cold. It was a wedding photo. Not our wedding. Mine. Me and Brooke. Standing in a quiet field outside Spring Hollow, the mountains behind us. No veil, no ballroom, just us. Vanessa's face went pale. You're married?" I smiled. "Yeah." She blinked like the word didn't compute. Her lips parted, then shut again. I could see it. She was trying to rework the story in her head, twist it into something that made sense. Then she gave a shaky little laugh. "That was fast." "Not really," I said. "It's been a couple of years." She ran a manicured hand through her hair, trying to reclaim control. "Well, I guess I shouldn't be surprised," she muttered. "You were always impulsive." I raised an eyebrow. "Impulsive?" She crossed her arms, jaw tight, chin slightly lifted. "Ryan, come on. Let's not pretend you acted like an adult. You left me at the altar." I let out a slow breath, shaking my head. "No, Vanessa. You destroyed everything the moment you decided a wedding ring didn't mean a damn thing." Her eyes narrowed. "I just wanted to enjoy a little freedom before the big day. It didn't mean anything." I stared at her, not saying a word. She sighed and flipped her hair back like she always did when she was deflecting. "Besides," she added, "I didn't legally cheat on you. That was it." I let out a dry, humorless laugh and walked into the kitchen. She hesitated, then followed me, her heels still tapping against the floor like she was stepping into a courtroom. I pulled a mug from the cabinet and poured myself a cup of coffee from the stainless steel machine on the counter. No nerves. No tension. Because the truth was I'd already won. She leaned on the counter, watching me. "You humiliated me," she said, voice sharp and low. I took another sip. "Did I?" Her mouth pulled tight. "You ruined my life, Ryan. Do you have any idea what it took to recover after you ran off? The questions? The people I had to convince I wasn't just abandoned?" I placed my mug gently on the counter. "Did you tell them about Nolan Grayson?" She froze. Her jaw clenched. But she didn't say a word. I nodded. "Didn't think so." She looked down, let out a breath through her nose, and shook her head. "I don't even know why I came here," she muttered. "I thought." She stopped, looking away. I tilted my head slightly. "What? You thought I'd be miserable? Still a wreck? Sitting in a dive bar somewhere, drinking my life away?" She didn't answer. And that's when I knew. Vanessa didn't show up for closure. She wasn't there to apologize. She came to win. She'd spent 2 years chasing my shadow. Burning through money, dragging lawyers into it, telling lies to anyone who'd listen, anything to make sure I paid for walking away. But now, standing in my kitchen, I was darting between the coffee mug that wasn't hers, the framed wedding photo that didn't have her in it, the life I'd built without her. She finally saw the truth. She lost. And she couldn't stand it. I walked past her, calm as ever, and opened the bottom drawer of the old desk in the living room. Inside was a manila folder, worn but intact. The same one Callahan had handed me back in Arizona. I didn't keep it out of spite. I kept it because deep down, I knew this day would come. I grabbed the folder and turned toward her. "Take a good look," I said. Then I tossed it onto the coffee table. It slid across the polished wood and came to a stop right in front of her. Vanessa's fingers hovered over it for a second before she finally picked it up and flipped it open. Her face went pale. Inside were the receipts. The photos. The timestamps. Her and Nolan Grayson having dinner at Capitol Grill. Her checking into a hotel. Her and Nolan in the parking lot, standing a little too close. 3 months' worth of proof laid out in black and white. She flipped through them slowly, her breath hitching just slightly. When she looked up, her eyes weren't angry, they were cold. Detached. "You kept these?" she asked. "Of course." Her lip curled. "Why?" I shrugged. "Because I knew you'd pull something like this eventually." The room went quiet. Neither of us moved. She swallowed hard and shut the folder with one hand, her other running through her hair like she was trying to smooth out the cracks in her composure. "You think this makes you better than me?" she said softly. I looked her right in the eye. "No, Vanessa. It just makes me smarter than you." She didn't flinch. She just stared at me, searching for something. Maybe the last bit of control she thought she still had. But she didn't find it. After a few long seconds, she stood up, grabbed her Chanel bag from the counter, and walked toward the door. She paused with her hand on the knob like she was about to say something, maybe the apology she should have started with. But she didn't. Whatever it was, she kept it to herself. Then she stepped outside and closed the door behind her. I stood there, listening to the sound of her heels fading down the driveway, one sharp click at a time. Then I turned, walked back into the kitchen, picked up my coffee, and sat down at the table. No anger. No weight on my chest. Just peace. Vanessa Hartley was gone. And I never saw her again. What do you think? Did Vanessa ever really love Ryan? Or was he just a piece of her perfect picture? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If this story hit you, give it a like and subscribe for more stories like this. We've got more coming, raw, real, and unforgettable. See you in the next one.